Hello there, and welcome to a quick look at the game design from Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, in particular the No Russian level, and by in particular I mean that's the only level I'm going to look at. So this is the sort of somewhat infamous level in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 that is known for being a little on the violent side, but I think I got a lot out of this level, and I think a lot of stuff that was missed by definitely some mainstream media, and possibly some of the people who played it, but that's something that happens. But I found this level to be very interesting, both from a game design point of view and just from doing stuff in video games as a medium that have never been done before. And I want to just take a quick look at this. This will be a bit different than some of the other episodes I've done, but whatever, I don't really care. So, if you haven't yet played the single player to Modern Warfare 2, go play it now. It's actually pretty good. It's like a very well designed roller coaster ride with lots of explosions going off beside you. It's a lot of fun. So just go play it. Done. Good. Welcome back. Alright, the second thing you should know before we start is that this is, it's Call of Duty, it's a violent game, whatever, lots of guns, lots of blood, lots of dying, but this level in particular is pretty gruesome. If you didn't know that already by playing it, which you should have by now, it's a pretty gruesome level, and it involves you slaughtering a whole bunch of civilians in an airport. And it's gruesome. So I'm just going to start it up. I'll probably play through a couple times because it's pretty short and I talk a lot if you didn't know that already. Alright, let's start. I'm just going to ignore the mission briefing and talk over it. It's just worth noting that the mission briefing doesn't really tell you a whole lot about this level that's coming up right here, about what you're actually going to be doing. It just says that you're going to be undercover, and that's about it. So I'll start once the level's actually playing, and you can sort of see what's going on at the same time as me talking, but oh wait, there, it's done loading, yay. Alright, onwards. This is a very interesting level in my opinion, and it does some stuff that I haven't really seen any other game do before, and it does it in a way that, it's not perfect, but it's very good, and it does it in a way that only games can really do. One of the things that I love looking at about video games are things that you can do in video games that you can't really do in any other medium. Movies and film and all sorts of books and whatever, they all have things that they can sort of do with those mediums, and then there are things that are specific to games that only games can do. And this is sort of a taste of one of those things. And I don't mean just open firing on civilians and going, yeah, that's fun. That's not at all what I'm talking about. So, when I first played through this level the first time, I was completely surprised. I'd played some of the Call of Duty games before. I sort of knew what they were about. They were fun, very well designed, very they're very well made. I don't know if I'd say well designed. They're very polished. They're very sort of linear, well made single player experiences, as I described, like a roller coaster. And they're fun, but that's about it. And so I was very surprised when I got to this level, because it did something totally different from what I'd seen before, and it made me, what was most important is it made me feel, that sounds really girly or whatever, but I don't care. It made me feel something totally different from any other game. And what I mean is that it made me feel bad. I played through this level for the first time. I had no idea what was coming. These guys walked out of the elevator and they open fired on this crowd, and I sort of joined them a little bit, and I'd shoot these people who were sort of, crawling along with trails of blood behind them. And every time I did it, I felt horrible about what I was doing. I felt just terrible. That's something that I've never felt in any other Call of Duty game, any other level in a Call of Duty game, or really any other game for that matter. Normally, you just go through, you just follow the mission objectives, you just shoot people, bam, bam, oh, it's fun. It's like going to a shooting gallery and just doing stuff. It's just fun to play with the guns, whatever. But this level made me feel really bad, really horrible about what I was doing. Every time I shot someone, I felt terrible about it. I'd watch these people fall down, these people crawling away from me, sort of like crying for their lives, trying to carry like a fellow person away with me only to get shot down. It was terrible. I felt really horrible about what I was doing. And that's something that I haven't really seen in any game before. Now, it's worth noting that I don't actually know if Infinity Ward and Activision really meant for this to be what they were going for. They very well might have just said, oh, let's make something really controversial that'll generate a lot of press, and it doesn't matter if it's bad press because it's just press anyways, and it'll get us more notorious in the gaming world, more people will buy it, and it'll help with the advertiser. I don't know, they may have just been thinking along those lines, and if so, that's kind of too bad, but I don't think that's the case. Or at least I don't think that's the case with some of the, at least with the people who designed this level, who are responsible for the game design, and there are a couple of reasons why, and I'm going to go back to the beginning of the level and show you those reasons in a bit. It's also worth noting that about halfway through this level, it sort of reverts into a very normal Call of Duty shoot all of the bad guys with guns part, and that's as soon as you get out onto the tarmac. And I'm just kind of ignoring that side of the level. It wasn't really necessary for this level, and it's just sort of more standard Call of Duty stuff. So I'm just going to kind of pretend that doesn't exist and ignore it, because this first half of the level is what's really interesting. The rest of that is just kind of boring, and that's kind of like right now is basically the end of that. They sort of run down, they run around a corner, and they go out into the tarmac, and it's just kind of boring again. So anyways, we've played through that once. I'm going to restart the level and play it through again, and I want you to notice a few things. In particular, there are 3 things that I want to point out. The first one you've already seen here is the speed at which you move. And you'll see that once I start moving out there. You are limited to a slow walk, and at a couple of distinct points, not distinct points, a couple points, if you hold down shift, you get a slightly faster walk. That's it. For most of the level, you can't, holding down shift does nothing. You can't run at all, and you're limited to an extremely slow walk. This means that you can't just run past this in normal level, like you would in a normal Call of Duty level. In a normal Call of Duty level, you're like constantly sprinting basically from place to place. You can't do that here. The second thing I want you to notice, it just passed so I missed my chance, is the mission objective. You can see it right there. You are given one mission objective for this level, and that's it. And all it says is follow Makarov's lead. That's it. That is a very, very vague mission objective, particularly for a Call of Duty game. Call of Duty games are kind of notorious for holding your hand, for being very linear and sort of holding your hand through everything. I've seen levels where I'm running from checkpoint to checkpoint that are like 10 meters away from each other. I don't know, I guess they figured players would get lost going from checkpoints 10 meters away. I don't know, but it's kind of ridiculous sometimes how handholdy it can get. And this level doesn't do that. It gives you one very vague mission objective, and that's it. It just says follow his lead. It does not say shoot the civilians. It does not say spare the civilians. It just says follow his lead. The third thing that I want you to notice, and this is the most important thing in this entire level, the most important game design decision that was made in this level, is that, as I'm doing right now, you can make it through the entire level, and I've talked about the first half, the interesting part, you can make it through this entire section of the level without firing your gun once. You can just walk alongside these guys, you don't have to fire your gun at all. And by doing that, the game designers had made sure that this is a choice. As a player, you are thrown into a tough moral decision where you are presented with a choice. It's not an explicit choice like in, I don't know, Mass Effect or Walking Dead, as great as those games are, but it's not a choice where you pick a choice from a menu. It's an implicit choice. You choose whether or not to shoot on these civilians, to fire upon them. That is your choice, and that is the choice that the game designers have set up for you. By making it not mandatory to shoot the civilians. Like, they don't get suspicious of you here if you don't shoot anyone. You can make it through the entire level without firing your gun, this entire part of the level. No problem, there are no penalties, there's nothing like that. You just keep walking and nothing happens. And that is incredibly important because it means that it is a choice. As a player, you get to choose whether or not you fire upon these people, whether or not you think it's worth it to slaughter these civilians in order to maintain your cover and potentially save more lives down the road. You are being thrown into a very tough moral decision, and you're being forced to make a choice. And it's a tough choice. It is a really tough choice, and whatever you do, you're probably going to feel horrible about it. But that's good. I mean, making you think about what you would do in a situation like this, making you sort of question your moral integrity is a really powerful thing that any form of media can do, and it's been done many times in film, it's been done countless times in literature, but games don't really do it that much, or at least not currently, and I think it's something that games have an incredible potential to do. Because, I mean, in a game, you as the player actually control stuff, and you can actually make a choice. In film, you can sort of be prevented with a situation, but the main character is just going to make their own choice, regardless, and you as the viewer can decide whether or not you agree with the main character or not. In a game, you get to actually make the choice, and you get to actually witness the consequences of your choice. And that is incredibly powerful. That's something that no other medium can really do. And that is something that is unique to games, that is something that as game designers we need to embrace, because we can do some amazing stuff with that if we just try. And this is an example of it. I mean, this level is not perfect at all. I mean, it's a very early example of this, but it is an example of this. It throws you into a tough decision, and it forces you to make a choice, and it does so very, very well. It's incredibly effective at evoking an emotional response, and sort of making you question what you would do morally in such a situation. I also like to point out that this right here is the section of the game that I consider to be the end of this level. You'll notice that as soon as I get through this corridor, I can't run here, I'm holding down shift. As soon as I get to this end of this corridor, I can suddenly sprint again, like I can, and my movement is like a normal Call of Duty, and my sprint is like a normal Call of Duty, and this is what I consider the end, and then, you know, police guys come up, and it's sort of boring Call of Duty again. So when I'm talking about this level, I'm talking about the first half, right up until this point here. I'm going to restart this one more time as I just sort of finish up whatever thoughts I have left in my mind. I also really like this opening. I mean, it doesn't really contribute to the game design or the whole moral thing I was talking about, but it's just really cinematic. I like it. It's very stylistically done. The clattering and the zipping of the bags and the sort of little murmurs and then the ding of the elevator and the lights come on, and then you get one word from this guy and you don't really know what it means. He says no Russian. And then you walk forward, you don't really know what's happening. You're just watching these guys with guns walk forward into an airport. And you're like, oh, what are they doing? They got guns. Oh, this is an airport. There's a bunch of civilians. What are they doing? My mission objective just says follow his lead. What am I doing? And you walk out and notice you can't use your gun until they do. You have to wait until they raise their guns for you to raise your gun and be able to shoot. So they have to shoot first. And then you watch them just slaughter a group of civilians in an airport. It's pretty gruesome. Anyways, those are my thoughts on this level. I thought it was very, very interestingly done, and it really made me think about it think about what I was doing and my actions and the choices I was making in a way that no level had ever really done before. In no game either. And I was totally shocked to have this come from a Call of Duty game, which isn't exactly known for doing that sort of thing. I was very impressed, I'd have to say. I don't know conclusively whether or not this was intended. They may have just said, oh, maybe the players will really enjoy slaughtering civilians, and if so, that's too bad, but, I mean, if you're making art of any sort, you have to be willing to accept that other people will make interpretations of your art that you may not have originally thought of, and that could be what I'm doing here, or maybe the game designers totally agreed with what I'm thinking, and they were thinking exactly along these lines. We want to put the player in a tough situation and make them choose. It is entirely possible that's what they're going for as well. And I think that's what, based on the game design decisions that they made, the no running, the moving very slowly, the very vague mission objective, and the fact that you can make it through the entire level without shooting anyone, those game design decisions lead me to believe that they intended this. They intended this to be a really tough moral situation that they were throwing you into, and that they wanted the player to actually make a choice about it and probably feel really bad about what they were doing. And they did a great job of it. They did a really great job. Anyways. Also, I want to point out something, and just this is totally an aside. It is possible when you're doing something in game design for one tiny decision to completely destroy anything that you had. It is possible for one small thing to sort of ruin anything that you had set up. And what I thought was a really interesting example of this is, I believe I think it's the Japanese version of this game, I could be wrong, but one of the localized version of the games, instead of their translation of no Russian was kill all the Russians. And this one tiny detail totally changes the entire setup, and it totally loses any of the meaning that this level has. Your mission objective and what that guy, not your mission objective, but what that guy told you is no longer vague. It's no longer leaving the choice up to you. It's explicitly saying, kill the people here. But they're waiting for me to move forward, interesting. And by doing that, any effect, any moral choice you have to do, any of that feeling bad I was talking about here is completely lost. Just like that. It is so easy to lose everything they had worked for just by that one little translation hiccup. By making it explicit in that one sort of missed localization thing that you have to shoot these people, anything that this level was going for, that the game designers were going for in this level, has just been completely lost, just like that, just that tiny thing. And I find that really interesting. It doesn't take much for something like that to be completely ruined. It's a very careful, precarious balance, but if they can get it right, it can be incredibly effective, and it can make you really really think about what you're doing and question whether or not what you're doing is the right thing, which is, if any game or piece of media can get you to do that, that's a really good sign. That is the sign of a truly great work of art. Anyways, that's about all I have to say. I just thought this was a really interesting level. Too bad the rest of the Call of Duty isn't like this, because, I mean, not just slaughtering people, but sort of, you know, tough moral decisions that really make you question whether or not you're doing the right thing. It's too bad the rest of it isn't like that, because, I mean, there's a lot of potential here, and it's just kind of being missed. But anyways, I hope more games do stuff like this. More games put you in tough situations. More games make you really think about what you're doing and whether or not it's the right thing. And more games focus on having situations for the player that are really make you think about stuff, instead of just blindly following mission objectives and doing stuff just for fun. That they instead focus on having some really interesting situations that they can throw you into that, I don't know, that just make you think, that really make you question your own morals and your own thoughts, and question what's right and what's wrong, and really make you remember the experience and get engaged by it in a way other than just being fun to play and bam 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 shooting people like a shooting gallery. I'm gonna run backwards because I don't want to go there. Anyways, that's about all I have to say on this. Hopefully, I'd be curious to know what other people thought of this, because I know that a lot of other people had very different takes on this, particularly some of the gaming journalists. There were some that had exactly the same thoughts I did on this, not thought that it was a really incredible sort of moral thing that you had to go through, and some people thought it was just gruesome, it was terrible that you were slaughtering these people, and that it was like a slaughter simulator, and any of the people who are thinking that really kind of missed the whole point of this level, in my opinion. And I don't know, that's just something that games are going to go through. I mean, every medium goes through it as it sort of grows up. People will accuse it of being the cause of violence, or it being a bad thing, or it sort of touching on really tough issues being a bad thing, and that, oh, it's like a slaughter simulator or whatever, blah 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 blah. I don't know. Every game, oh, that's kind of cool. Every medium goes through that, and games are going through that right now, and there are going to be people who are against it, and that's whatever. There's nothing we can really do about that other than keep making games that touch on these issues until it just becomes normal that games can really talk about really tense and serious issues like this, like making a moral choice between slaughtering civilians and not. I mean, that's a pretty tough choice. Anyways, hope you got something out of this. Curious to know what you have to say. Leave some stuff in the comments about what you got out of this, whether or not you agree with me, whether or not you got something else, a totally different message out of this level. I'm curious to know what you guys all have to think. Anyways, that's all I have to say on this. Farewell, and happy playing games.